So welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today, I think I'm going to get his name right, is Dr. Kyeremanteng. Welcome to the show, brother.
Mike, I have been awaiting this show for a long time. This is going to be so much fun. And I just want to commend you, first of all, for the work you've been doing, just being an advocate for so many aspects of health, and just been like a nice, steady voice throughout the pandemic too. So I commend you, and really grateful for you asking me to come on the show.
Well, I'm super grateful that you're here today. You know, we were supposed to link up a few years ago, but it didn't happen for whatever reason, but we're back here today. So I'm ready to rock too. But just before we kind of get into it, can you give the audience a brief background about yourself?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief. Born in Edmonton, Ghanaian parents, did medical school in Edmonton. Always knew from an early age that I wanted to do medicine. Just I was a sickly kid with a lot of asthma, and really wanted to be able to provide that care that similar to my pediatrician, just being there for his patients, and went into intensive care. Fell in love with that after a rotation at Calgary Foothills Hospital. I just loved the team environment, thinking on your toes, high stakes environment. It was meant to be. Found a love for palliative care as well. Just it's a lot of people find that odd, but it's truly is a privilege to be with folks near the end of life, and to help carry them through in the least amount of pain as possible. And then saw tons of inefficiencies in the healthcare system, so started a research program called Resource Optimization Network. We're producing tons of papers, but I was finding that nothing was changing. So then started a podcast to get the word out, the Quadcast, or Solving Healthcare. And then my life changed completely after that. Started to do some mainstream media, started a charity called Bridges Over Barriers. Started a Black mentorship program that's stemmed from that, and honestly is why we're here today. And as I said, doing a bit of the mainstream media stuff, and COVID was really the jump off point for that. And like I said, life changed ever since. Oh, part of that too is with the increased exposure. I'm sure I became department head of ICU at my hospital. So that's almost 2 years deep into that. So a lot of life-altering, life-changing events over the last 3 years.
Well, congrats on all that, man. And, everything that you said is part of the reason why I want to have you on. I know you're a very, very well-credentialed dude. So, thanks so much again for sharing that. But, one of the things that you shared, I was actually my very first question. So you have a podcast, Solving Healthcare. You've had it for a few years now. I see you're getting more and more guests. I think you're up to 235 episodes or something like that. You've got quite a few episodes. So congratulations on that. But my question was, why did you start it? I'm very, very curious about this, because a lot of people ask me the same question, and I haven't seen too many MDs in Ontario anyway starting their own podcasts. I mean, I don't even know if we're the only two. Maybe there's a couple other out there, but I'm not aware of them anyway. So why did you start your podcast?
So it was one of those things where it was clear to me I wanted to make a difference in the healthcare system. When you see how inefficient it was, like, I know, Mike, you must, I mean, we could start from anywhere, but what you, unnecessary admissions to ICU, more expensive meds being used as opposed to less expensive, the lack of focus on prevention. And so we would produce academic papers that would land in, you name it. Like, we've been in like BMJ, like impactful papers, but nothing was changing. And to me, I sat down with the group and asked ourselves, when you produce a paper, how many people read this? And it's, and it's very niche. It's very like a specific amount of people. So how do we amplify? How do we get it out? So you put this out on social media, and sometimes that works, but it's not the same. So then I thought, do we do a YouTube channel? Do we do a blog? And I love podcasts. Like, I constantly. I'm either listening to an audiobook or podcast or some fresh beats, but I love
Same
listening
here.
to podcasts. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I just like, okay, let's try this thing. And one thing as we get to know each other, Mike, I make decisions. Like I move. Like
Yeah.
it was about 2 weeks. We said yes to doing a podcast. And 2 weeks after that, we had our first episode out. It was
Yeah.
really. I'm a believer of like you just fail fast, right? Like let's just try this out.
I
And
agree. Just
yeah,
taking action. That you always learn by taking action. But go ahead.
absolutely. No, and then man, I'm so it's funny because my wife and I were talking about this. She did not want this to happen. Like I'm at the time yeah, we had our third kid was about a month old when I said no, he would have been a year and a bit. And we're moving houses and I'm like, I know it's heavy, but I'm feeling the itch. There was a voice inside that was telling me it's our time. Like we got to do this. And wow, my life changed as I mentioned, Mike. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That's awesome, man. No, I'm happy to hear that. And I feel the same way. You start a podcast, you just think that you're kind of, going to put out some information on a different platform or a different medium. And then all of a sudden, the big thing for me is that I'm just able to communicate now with so many more people. I've been able to meet so many more people. I mean, a lot of it, has unfortunately been virtually because of COVID. And then obviously, a lot of my guests don't live in London, but still, I've been able to connect with so many people that I never thought I'd be able to connect with before. And then, I've always thought, when I watch, people like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or someone with a big podcast, like, man, those guys are so lucky. They get to speak to someone, so interesting, so often they can basically get on, whoever they want. And, I'm certainly not at that level, but, it is interesting to connect with, great guests like yourself. And I'm sure that you've probably felt the same way since starting yours.
Oh man, it's underappreciated. Like you get to pick the brain of some of the most influential, brilliant minds in whatever field field of practice. Like for me, what was a new area that I didn't know much about was nutrition space, like the diabetes reversal concepts. Like we really dove into that when at the beginning of the pandemic, when I saw that clear ties to poor metabolic health. In other words, obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension. We saw that tie, and one of our producers, I don't know how she got on. We got onto it, but maybe she pointed me towards Jason Fong's work, and saying how he's reversing type 2 diabetes with fasting. And then you look into low carb, people are reversing their diabetes. Keto, they're reversing their diabetes. And going through medical school, we're not learning this shit. I never knew this. Like I never really fully appreciated that this was a possibility. And then we're in this pandemic where we're seeing patients with metabolic syndrome die, basically, and we're not talking about this. So I was like, let's amplify this bad boy. Let's get these guys on the show. Let's learn about this. We did a summit, even like a low carb summit, just to kind of really try and propel this and get even
Yeah.
healthcare providers
I was going to
involved.
ask you about that, and I was actually going to ask you how you got into the low carb space. It's a space that I've looked into for a while. I've had or been on Rob Wolf's podcast a couple of times. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you're familiar with him. And
Oh yeah, he was on the show. He's a
yeah,
pimp.
and
The guy's
he's been on
glorious.
mine too.
Yeah.
He's a great dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's pretty advanced, I think, at BJJ now too. I think he's up to his
Yeah.
brown belt or
Did you
something.
do BJJ too?
Yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I didn't mention this at the start of the show, but one of my really good buddies, Tommy Codwell. I think you
Oh
went on his
yeah,
podcast.
I went on his
Yeah,
show.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Tommy and I have trained together a million times together. Hopefully we'll get to train some more. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely got my number. He's got some size on me too, but he's a really
Looks
good
like a
guy to train
beast,
with.
by the way.
He is. He
Yeah.
is. He's a freak. He's got good stand up and he's got really good wrestling and jiu-jitsu. So
Wow.
not a guy you want to meet in a back alley.
No
But
doubt.
getting back to the low carb stuff. So Is it something that you were interested in yourself, or it sounds like you're actually more interested in using it for your patients? Like most people, get into low carb, or they get into, low calorie, or they change their diet because they want to lose weight. That's, by far the most common reason. But it sounds like your interests peaked in it, maybe because of you noticed a lot of people who were succumbing to COVID were not healthy metabolically. Like what was it exactly that kind of spurred your interest?
Yeah, great question. And for me, it wasn't for my own benefit. Like, I'm fit. I didn't feel a need to change my diet too much. I've been doing time restricted eating or intermittent fasting for 5 years now. It's just more lifestyle and convenience. Like when I eat, I just eat. Like
Yeah.
so that's the joy of fasting from my perspective. But
Yeah.
to me, it was the education and getting it to people that needed it. Like
Yeah.
like if you think about this objectively, okay, you have people dying around the world from COVID, right? They are, as per the literature and my clinical practice, 80 to 90% were obese or overweight, right?
Yeah.
How the hell are we not giving people the tools to try and get better, knowing, like, and this is pre-vaccine, folks. Like this is like this, and people were ready for action. Like you saw, like I often give this example, when George Floyd happened, the people were ready to move, to do something. They were penned up in their houses. They were seeking change in so many aspects of the world and life. Imagine as public health officials or physicians, clinicians, all of us saying, listen, we think it's important for y'all to get healthier. Here are the tools we're talking about: what you eat, talking about moving, reducing your stress, finding a sense of community. Are you going to get perfect? Are you going to all lose 20 pounds? No, but at least we're moving in the right direction to put a point of emphasis and make it culture, make it exciting that this is our chance to get healthier and not only risk of COVID, but cardiovascular disease, stroke, cancers, all get better if we're healthier. What
Yeah.
an opportunity this was. And nobody was saying. So I mean, I'm a small fry, but I was saying, let's go. Let's talk about this. I try and throw this to mainstream media. I say, hey, because you develop a relationship with these guys. You say, hey, give me 5 minutes to spit this out. Try to encourage these folks. No one would bite. It wasn't sexy.
That's crazy.
Like there was news agencies that say, oh, you could write an op-ed about it too. And they would say, oh, we put it in the national, like a national platform.
Why do you think no one would bite?
That's the thing that I really struggle with. I think it was like when I brought this up with some people that were higher up in healthcare organizations, they felt like they just don't know about it. They just feel like there's no teeth to it. They're like, no one wants to get healthy. And then I do wonder if the fat shaming component was part of it too. Like people
That's
worry
what I was
about,
thinking too.
and I'll say this, Mike, I don't give two rats asses about people worrying about fat shaming when it comes to lives. Like you're dealing with life and death scenarios. Like
I
I
agree.
simply, in 3 years of taking care of the sickest of the sick COVID patients, I never once took care of somebody that had no risk factors, that were completely healthy. And even I'll say there was people in their 20s that came in with COVID and were really sick, but their weight was they were extremely obese, like extreme, like to the point where I doubt they could walk up steps. And yes, if you look at their past medical history, if you look at their medications, they're on nothing and they'll be deemed as healthy. But I'll tell you what, that ain't healthy as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I just thought this was a huge opportunity we missed, a momentum. It's like we could have just gained so much momentum from that perspective, but there was just no bite.
Yeah, I don't understand why there wasn't any bite either. I mean, it seems to be, something that is not controversial. You know, like if you're, I mean, not that things like, you know, I don't think, you know, something like vitamin D or natural immunity would be controversial either, but you know, it seems to be, but like this seems even to be less. Like we're literally just talking about like weight loss, and have we gotten so lost as a society, and has we become so weak and made like society so fragile that we can't even talk about the benefits of weight loss anymore? I mean, that's really, you know, taking away a physician's ability to make a patient better, to improve their life, to improve their overall health. Like it's taking away our ability to do our job. Like people need to understand that when you are promoting you know, this culture of it's, you know, okay to be obese, and it's okay to you know, indulge in food all the time. You know, you're promoting an unhealthy society, you're promoting unhealthy people, you're promoting the hospitals being clogged up, you're promoting people dying from COVID. And I don't think a lot of people, you know, realize, you know, this when they say the things that they say about, you know, a body positivity or whatever people are using these days. And you know, like you said, in your in the ICU that you worked at, you know, most of the people who were very young coming in were unfortunately very, very obese. And it's something that we need to discuss a little bit more. And it's really something that, you know, physicians shouldn't be afraid to discuss. And, you know, it kind of sounds like too, you know, when I asked you that question, you know, why do you think they won't bite? You know, that was the answer I had in my mind first. I think they wouldn't bite because they were afraid of looking bad. They were afraid of fat shaming, and they were afraid of not being part of this, you know, body positivity movement. And it's a shame that that's happening because, like we've just discussed, it's costing lives, and it's costing lives for a lot of different people.
Oh man, this, I mean, not to digress too much, but we lost our way over the last few years. Like we really did. Like what I witnessed, in my opinion, was just a true lack of leadership and a lack of like values. Like what are our values as a society,
Agreed.
as Canadians, Ontarians, North Americans? Where are our values? And our, I always figured our values is you do the right thing, you do the best to serve others, you you like you try and support the weakest that need your help. And so many aspects of the pandemic, we just, it was all fear and images, like image based. It's what I don't do. I'm too afraid to look bad. And I mean, I was that way too. I won't lie. Like you know, went on national media saying things that I would love to have been to express my true opinion about, but because of that cancel culture, but it just, things weren't safe. And so yeah, it just was a landscape that was nuts, and we totally lost our way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I shared this with you, but like I literally posted a peer-reviewed study on LinkedIn, and and I've said this story before, but it's kind of funny. And the only thing I said in the in the caption were facts greater than feelings, something that I borrowed actually from Lane Norton, one of the best nutritionists in the world. But that's all I said. The rest of my posts was literally just quoting a PubMed study. That's it. It was something that Dr. Marty McCary had put out. He was on here actually a month or two ago, and I got banned from LinkedIn for that. So you know, it's crazy. I mean, you really can't say anything against the mainstream narrative. And the thing that bothers me about that is that, you know, misinformation, this word misinformation, you know, the people using this word are often producing more misinformation than the people that they think that they're correcting. You know, like this, you know, Science Up First group and the stuff that they're promoting. And, you know, this guy, Tim Caulfield, who's getting like the
Oh,
Order of
don't get me
Canada.
started.
I mean,
Is he
that
really
guy,
getting the Order of Canada?
I don't
No.
know. I think he already received it. I don't know if they had the ceremony or whatever, but I think is awarded it. I mean, look at him and look at all the people like, you know, whether it's Bill Gates or Dr. Fauci or anyone else who said that if you get vaccinated, you won't get sick, or if you get vaccinated, you won't spread the virus. that was misinformation. That was like hardcore misinformation. That was misinformation to the point where a lot of people wouldn't have gotten vaccinated if they didn't think that to be true.
Mm.
And yet, all those people, nothing happens to them with regards to misinformation. You know, they're not reprehensible by their colleges or their regulatory bodies, nothing like that. So it's so strange how, you know, someone can you know, mention something about, you know, natural immunity or vitamin D, and, you know, be called that they're spreading misinformation or spreading dangerous information. And yet someone can say that, you know, if you get vaccinated, you're not going to get infected with the disease. You're not going to at least be hospitalized. You're not going to spread to others. And yet that's not classified as misinformation. And so, you know, I think there's a major double standard there that needs to be corrected.
Oh man, there needs to be a massive debrief with this pandemic. And first of all, I do want to echo that. I completely agree. Like these people that were saying, "Oh, you don't have to worry about myocarditis or whatever," like it's overstated as the risk of myocarditis. I'm sorry. If you're 18, you don't need the triple vax or whatever when you're such low risk. Like the way we treated our youth, the lowest risk groups, like to put it into context, throughout this pandemic, if you were a child, doesn't matter what age, it was more risky for me to drive from here to London than it would be for me dying from COVID. And yet we acted like you were going to anybody that got it, like we better close down schools. The kids' head's going to explode. Like this was not reasonable. We totally lost our way. And I'll tell you, as an ICU doc too, where I mean, same thing with family doc, most physicians, that you always look at things holistically. You have to. Like say somebody comes in with multi-organ failure, their lungs aren't working, their kidney ain't working, their liver ain't working. If you ignore the kidney, then in terms of a treatment plan, then the patient could die. If you don't consider the medication's impact or your treatment impact on the lungs or everything at once, you're not going to serve the patient well. And that's the same perception or the same concept when it comes to pandemic. Okay, yes, we got to do our best to reduce the risk of spread, but how's that going to affect youth? How's that going to affect mental health? How's that going to affect cancer screening? How's it going to affect our elective ORs that are now, and I'll tell you for real, a lot of people dying waiting for their quote unquote elective ORs. How's that going to affect public trust when we're not having open dialogue about things? No long-winded thought about what our repercussions of our actions are going to be. This was insane. You know what I mean? And this is coming from a guy that was seeing it. Like, this is not no epidemiologist sitting behind a desk. I'm literally intubating these COVID patients. I'm there. I'm there when they die. I'm there to tell them their loved one from afar, because they weren't allowed to visit them in the hospital, that their loved one had passed. Like, I saw the destruction COVID had on patients, but still, you can't ignore the rest of society. You can't, because people still have to live. Like it just was. I know I'm going off because it was just so insane to me from somebody that tries to look at things at a holistic level that we could ignore so much.
Well, you know, we need people going off, because the thing is that we had so many people going off about all this nonsense and all this stuff that became misinformation, that we need, you know, people talking about things in the opposite direction too. And we need people talking about the consequences of what's happening with public health overall. Because the thing is that, like, I'm not against public health. I'm just against bad public health, which is what we have now. You know, what we need is good public health. We need, you know, good public health workers making good public health decisions for people. And unfortunately, you know, the trust, I think, in public health now is lost, you know. And I think that's very unfortunate, because, you know, again, like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer whatsoever in any way. I've said, I don't know how many times that, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, the vaccine was, a very, very useful tool, and it probably did help a lot of people, prevented them from being hospitalized or from dying and from making, the first and couple waves worse. But, now 2023, everyone's had COVID. Depending on what paper you look at, it's always in the 90s, but it's something like 94% of people have now had COVID. So almost everyone now has natural immunity. So I think that the reason why, it's almost been a year, I think, in Ontario anyway, and we had really severe lockdowns. I think it's been nearly a year where we've basically had no restrictions whatsoever. And the reason why we've had no restrictions is, yes, partly due to the vaccine, but it's mostly now due to the fact that people have natural immunity. I mean, 94% of people are high or have it. Lots of people have even had it twice or three times. So, I think that's, something that was, overlooked in the pandemic. We should have been able to talk about it sooner. But what I was getting at there, saying that I'm, still, you think that that I'm still pro-vaccine, there's other vaccines that's definitely saved lives. And the thing is now is that those uptakes of those vaccines are going to be reduced now because of all the nonsense that was put out by the public health officials. So, I actually don't think it's the anti-vaxxers per se that are fueling the decrease in fundamental vaccines for children and for adults that actually need them, that would prevent severe disease and illness. I actually think that it's the misinformation from people in public health that's led to this, very, very poor relationship from what I can see now between the public and public health. And that's why, we're not seeing as many uptakes now in fundamental vaccines for children and for adults.
Yeah. I honestly, when I look back at some of these approaches, like people say, oh, we had to be so sure in our approach so that people would not waver. And imagine sitting with or hearing a public health official come on the mic and say, like, you know what, I'm asking all you guys to mask right now. Do I know it's going to be 100% effective? I don't think so, but I do think maybe it could impact spread. So let's collectively try this. We'll evaluate it as we go, but this is where I think we need to go. Stay humble, stay real. Don't be all certain that masks will work 100% work all the time because you don't wear a mask, you're gonna kill grandma or whatever. Like, you gotta be real. Yeah. It's a long game. You need to trust the folks for when they need you next time, they will listen. And there's nothing wrong with, I do it with my patients all the time. I'm not sure what's happening. This is what I think is the best course of action. If it doesn't work, we're going to look at other alternatives. It's real. If I come in and I say, this is what it is, 100% sure, and I'm wrong, they're not going to listen to a word I'm saying moving forward. Stay humble. We don't know it all. No one knows it all.
Yeah, you got to build it. No, you're 100% right. You got to build the trust by staying humble, because if you act like you're a know-it-all, then something does go wrong, like you said, then that trust all of a sudden is gone. So I completely agree with you on that. And I want to ask you a few more questions, because I know you started a few other recent ventures recently, and one of them was your Substack. So congrats on that. And you put out, something that I can definitely get down with today. And that's, you're talking about deadlifting. Yes. So, I'm a big deadlifter, always do it all the time. I have, for probably about 20 years or so now or more. So how did you get into deadlifting, and why did you decide to write about it? It's just, it's a subject that I absolutely love, and I love that a doctor is talking about it, but it's not something that, like, most doctors don't write blog posts on deadlift. So just wondering how you got into it and why you feel like it was necessary to write to write about it.
I love that you picked this up, because number one, so we started that Substack basically as a one-stop shop for folks to have healthcare solutions there. Like, we really want to empower folks to, hey, you want to learn how to eat better, move better, exercise, reduce your stress. Everything's here in one place. Quadcast.substack.com. Just jump on that. And so then, to me, there's a few things that I get quite passionate about, and exercise is one of them. And deadlifting, in my opinion, changed my life. Like, it's one of those exercises that, like, you will get, it's a whole body exercise that people don't
Yeah.
realize it's a whole body. But if you can deadlift with good form and push proper weight, everything gets better. You have, like, with good form, like your back, your posterior chain is better. It translates well into other sports. Like, I'm a big hockey player. You're more sturdy on your skates. You're harder to push off the puck. You're gaining lean body mass naturally because you're everyone that deadlifts wants to push that weight. They want to ramp up to see what their max lifts are. There's a conditioning component too. If you want, like, you could add it to, like, make it into a high interval intensity training component, like almost like a CrossFit element if you want. But wow, it really is such a magical exercise. And then, like, if you think about what you're doing, you're lifting something heavy off the ground. Like, it's so practical. Like, I often, this sounds ridiculous, but sometimes, like, if I'm doing it, if I'm, trying to do a heavy lift, I'm like, my kid is underneath this car right now. I gotta fuck it. Am I allowed to cuss? I
That's
just did.
awesome.
I'm going to lift this car off the ground. This is what's at stake right now. And so,
That
like,
is some David Goggins mindset, and I love it. That's
yeah,
wicked.
Goggins. Man, I could get behind that. But yeah, I just think it's such a great exercise. And there's like, I did hurt my back, not deadlifting, but hurt my back about a year ago, and so I've been more on the sumo side than traditional lately, but
Okay.
or doing RDLs.
Yeah, so I actually just do trap bar deadlifts, and that's what I've been doing now for the last like 7 or 8 years. I got away from the conventional ones. Like, I love conventional deadlifts, and I think they're awesome. They're just, for me, they're just a little bit too high risk for injury. Like, if you do throw out your back with a deadlift, even if it's only for like a week or two, like, it still sucks. And
Mm,
for me, what kind of happened was, actually, there was one time a few years ago, I was going on a ski trip, and about 2 weeks or so before, I kind of tweaked my back. Now, I was fine for the trip, but what I was thinking was, if I did this like a couple days before or even a week before, might not have had as good of a trip. I was like, you know what? I don't think it's worth it anymore. As much as I like, trying to build up some like really jack traps, I think it's not worth it.
mm.
But those are my thoughts on trap bars deadlifts. I think that more or less you get most of the benefit from conventional deadlifts, but you're reducing your risk of injury by a lot. So again, I encourage other people to do them as well, because like you were saying, they literally work almost every single muscle in your body. And like, if you're a guy, like, you want big traps, like, big traps are good. It's definitely gonna just make you more attractive to the opposite sex. I think it's big traps are so helpful for so many reasons. So big fan of those, and I think that people should do them.
I love it. Yeah, and you get a little bit more quad in there too, right? So it is safer. You're more upright. I did my back once deadlifting 5 years ago, and it was embarrassing. I was at the Calgary gym, bunch of 20-year-olds, maybe even, yeah, late teens. It's like, hardly had the warm up. I'm like, I'm gonna show these kids, old man still got it. And I did like it was the most humbling, embarrassing thing where I pulled my back mid pull or whatever. And I was like, on my knees, and like, yeah, old man doesn't belong. You know what I'm
And how long
saying?
were you out for then?
Oh, that one was probably about 2 weeks. That one
Two
wasn't too
weeks.
bad.
Okay.
And, but yeah, usually I'm good for one a year.
Right on. Right on. So another thing you got on your blog recently, and it's one of my favorite subjects. I think it was the first one that you tackled regarding nutrition, or one of the ones on your blogs, was increase your protein intake. And so, I'm a big believer of increasing, your protein intake. I've talked nutrition on here many times before. I always tell people, try to aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. So, what kind of got you interested in writing about protein, and why do you think people should eat more of it?
Yeah, great question. So I wasn't really attuned to it much, but two people got me thinking that this needs to be more emphasized. So Rob, on his, I think it was his second appearance or third appearance on the show, he was mentioning how he thinks this is a great hack for improving your health. And then Ted Naiman had him on the show, and he was telling, he was basically explaining how everything gets better if you jack up your protein. And it was, and I'm a big 80-20 fan. So like Pareto's principle, like looking at
Me
the
too.
most efficient way of getting your results. And then I was thinking to myself, this hits everything. If you think about it, you increase your protein intake, you get more lean body mass, you improve your metabolic rate. By doing so, you're less likely to be frail. You're going to be somebody that is less, that's going to be more resilient to injury and everything. Then you think about the impact it has on insulin resistance and making and reducing insulin resistance, or improving insulin sensitivity by increasing your lean body mass. Then you think about the fact that you get fuller when you jam up your protein. So if you focus on that, you're less likely to eat junk because you're just fuller. And so he has that PE ratio of like protein and energy ratio, and just thinking about really emphasizing that protein aspect of things. And to me, I was like, this is perfect. It's non-denominational. Like if you want to be vegan and try this, or if you want to keto, low carb, whatever it is, you could still think about your protein intake. And
Yeah.
I just thought this is the 80-20 of nutrition right there. Right there. If you just do this simple hack, you will start winning.
Yeah.
And
I think most people are not eating enough protein.
nowhere close.
Yeah, like
Nowhere
nowhere
close.
even close. And I think like the recommended daily allowance is something like it's ridiculous. I think it's something like zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.4 grams like per kilogram. I don't even think it's per pound. So, that's like the enough to like just barely keep you alive. Like
Yeah.
if you like, I'm 200 pounds. Like if I want to maintain muscle, I need to eat at least 160 a day, but I go for more like 200 a day. Because also too, I do quite a bit of cardio. I mean, you said you play hockey, so you probably do quite a bit of cardio too. I mean, if you're going to be doing cardio and then also too, long hours sometimes at the clinic or at the hospital, there's not, sometimes you don't get that much time to eat. Having protein in your diet is going to make sure that you don't lose muscle during those times. And like you were saying too, when you lose muscle, you're also then losing your metabolic rate. So then that's going to decrease or hinder your ability to lose fat, which you obviously nobody wants. So, protein intake is something that, we don't discuss enough at all, as physicians, and we should be discussing it more because it can make, a major impact in your life. And one thing I found too, a lot of people ask you, when should you take your protein, that kind of thing. I mean, I think it is good in some ways to split it up, but overall, the number one thing most important by far is your total intake in the 24 hours. You can look at studies all day that, say, you can only absorb 50 grams, or you should, eat most of your protein after your workout, or, you should eat some in the morning and some midday, some later. There's so many different variations of it. And I'm not saying that there's no differences in that, but I think by far, going back to Pareto's principle, the most important part of that is your total protein intake. And whenever I've switched up my intake to say, heavier in the day, or heavier at night versus in the day, or something like that, generally speaking, I can't really tell too much of a difference, because it's always, actually I always get the same total number.
And what are your sources? What do you like to like? Are you doing shakes? Or you like? What's
Yeah,
your?
so I wouldn't be able to hit 200, I don't think, without shakes. And I'm someone who likes to eat a lot, because, say if I eat 4 eggs, for lunch, there's only 7 grams of protein
Yeah.
in a large egg. Like it's only like 28 grams of protein,
Yeah.
right? So, but eggs are definitely a source. And then I eat a ton of meat. So every single night, I have, a lot of beef. Like tonight, we're making some tacos actually. And I think I got like 1.5 pounds of beef out. So I'll probably eat, close to a pound, maybe Emily will eat, half a pound or less, maybe like, even more than that. So that's kind of like typical for me. But then I usually always have at least 2 scoops of protein. So each scoop is around 25 each after my workout. So basically, the biggest sources for me are going to be meat, eggs, whey protein, because you're not getting much in like fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. So those would be the 3 biggest by far. And then, I do eat meat sometimes with my eggs in the day. So I may get, meat a couple times. How about
Yeah.
yourself?
No, I'm similar to you. I probably I must say I think I don't get to my goal most days, but I certainly swing. Like
Yeah.
today I had 5 eggs. I just took we have some chopped up chicken, so I just put a bunch that looked reasonable into the pan, fried that up, ate that, and had a bunch of berries. Normally around this time I'll have a shake, but I usually just have one now that I think about it. And then just we're from Alberta, so we a lot of beef in our house. The boys,
Nice.
luckily, are behind that too. So, yeah, we like. I think tonight's burritos, and so I got 3 boys, and my wife is like she eats real too. So we go through an embarrassing amount of food, like
Yeah, I
Costco.
can't imagine.
Oh,
how
like
much.
we easily spent $1,000 at Costco, easily.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
nuts.
So you have 3 boys, hey?
Yeah, and the top 2 are like massive eaters, a 10 and 8-year-old. The 4-year-old, he's a little finicky, but he's getting there. He's getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good. I imagine you probably chatted with Tommy Caldwell a little about that because he's all into, making his kids eat healthy and making sure that they enjoy, what they're eating and the importance of nutrition. So that's awesome that you're doing that for your kids.
Thank you.
One thing I really wanted to ask you about was something that you wrote about recently. It's a little bit different from the topics that we've discussed, but I love that you wrote about it, and it's breath work. So,
Yeah.
breath work is something that I have done in the past. I have to admit, recently I haven't been doing as much, or really in some ways, I can't say at all. Sometimes I still do it when I do the cold showers and that kind of thing. But how did you get interested in breath work, and why did you decide to write about it?
Yeah, I don't know what got me. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure what tipped me. I think maybe it was the Wim Hof time. It was like maybe 5 years ago. You're seeing a lot about this Wim Hof breathing and the cold exposure. And I never the most cold exposure I did was the cold showers. But I
Same
like,
here.
yeah, and I like the Wim Hof breathing, or like the thinking about the breathing, because I found when it came to doing meditation, it got me
Mhm.
into a massive, like in a great spot. So like when I try and do 5 minutes a day at that time of life, and so you do a Wim Hof breath, and then you're just in the Zen moment. Like we're 3 kids, young family, like our life was hectic, so it was meditation was needed,
Yeah.
and yeah, I found it very helpful. And then I read the Oxygen Advantage by
Okay.
Patrick McEwen, and my eyes further open. Like when you think about the impact your breathing can have on allergies, asthma, how you can improve your conditioning in general by the way you breathe. I was all in. So some of the common practices that I do is like my meditation practice. It's a breath. I focus on my breath and just make sure I take large nasal breaths to and just exercise that diaphragm. But the what I'll do is not quite often is breath holds. Like I will um say, for example, if I'm taking the stairs, I try every set of stairs, I'll hold my breath, and just to try and improve my conditioning. Like it's a nice, easy hack to improve your conditioning without having to, you know, do a hit exercise. The other
Yeah.
one I'll do is in the pool. So I'll we got a pool in the backyard. I'll just hold my breath for the length of the pool, and just work, try and gain my conditioning that way. So the breath work I think is just, we talk again, Pareto's principle, something so easy that you could do anywhere to
Yeah.
improve your health and wellness. It's a no brainer.
Yeah, it's something that I think I need to, like, I've learned about it before, and I even had a breath guy on here before. And but it's something that I'm guilty of not really doing like a program. Like, I'm certainly conscious of, like, oh man, I just noticed that I was breathing through my mouth. I need to start breathing through my nose. I'm conscious of that. And then, like, when I do the cold showers, which I don't do on the sometimes I do them on the weekends actually, but I'm not, I haven't had it as a habit for every single day yet. But sometimes when you do the cold showers, I mean, you have to breathe. I mean, you kind of do that like reflexively in some ways anyway. You're not really even putting in the effort. But it is something that, just like you said, going back to the Pareto principle, it's like it can make, literally like every minute of your life, potentially better if you're just breathing better. Like, why wouldn't you, learn how to do that? And I'm, kind of talking to myself right now because I'm one of those people. But it seems to be like low hanging fruit, like, why not, just learn how to breathe better, and it may improve how you feel. And like you said too, though, exercise performance.
Yeah.
I think that it can make a difference. And I haven't looked into them before, and I don't even know exactly what they're called, but I know there is some like inhaling devices out there where you need to use more effort when you're breathing, and because of that, your breathing becomes more effective. Like, there's some devices on Amazon that people have, and there's
I've seen them at
legit,
the gym too. Like the
yeah,
guys wearing them at the gym.
there's like some legit, people who have said that, that it is in fact effective. I'm not sure if you're talking about the the training mask where it kind of supposed to mimic high altitude. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something where it's like resistance against your breathing. But I should look up the term before I maybe talk out of turn here. But
Hmm.
it's definitely something that some people have felt can, improve their overall breath, and their
Hmm.
and potentially too their VO2, which is pretty incredible.
Hmm.
Um,
I would
so
say almost everybody should read the Oxygen Advantage.
yeah,
There's like, because it's not only like your conditioning, it's allergies, it's asthma. Like people, like if you want to clear your nose, he's got this method where and it works. I do it all the time with my kids. You plug your nose, you walk 7 steps ish, and you just go through that cycle. Will clear your sinuses. Like, it sounds voodoo, but
yeah.
just read it, try it, and actually, I won't even say anything. You read it and try it, but there's some gems in that book.
I know we gotta go soon, but that's a really good point that you just kind of brought up the word like voodoo and that kind of thing, and it just brings up a subject that I feel is necessary to bring up. So I feel that, not to get back into the COVID thing, but just with everything, if you're an MD and if you associate yourself with anything that's like alternative, you know, all of a sudden all your colleagues are going to be like disrespecting you or calling you a quack and that kind of thing. And I think that's why they don't do it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of MDs do believe that, vitamin D could be effective for, just slightly, I'm not making exaggerate claims, so just slightly reducing maybe the incidence and the severity of COVID. But the thing is that if you say that, then you're not associating yourself with someone who is, the head of their department in the hospital, or the head of the department at the university, or that kind of thing. You're associating with, potentially like a 20-year-old health and wellness blogger who has
Mm-hmm.
zero education. And so, I think that people in medicine have become afraid of, tackling some alternative health subjects because they're just afraid of the association. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they think that what that person is putting out is bunk or is not good information. They're just afraid of that association. And so
Totally.
I'm so glad for that, for people like yourself who are, chatting with other naturopaths and things like that, because like, that's like, for some MDs, that's just, absolute poison, or like career suicide is, talking with someone who, is not an MD, who is, still providing health advice. And so, I do commend you for that, and I appreciate you, reaching out to guests and discussing other, alternative modes of health.
No, and I must say, like, I really appreciate you bringing this up, because the last thing we need in medicine right now is for us to be closed-minded, like to think that we have all the answers and it's all through conventional stuff. Like, I mean, it could a chiropractor have the answers to certain things? Why not? Could a naturopath have the answers to some solutions to healthcare? Why not? Like, why close doors, right? Like, let's stay open-minded, realizing that we don't know everything, and just you know come at it with an open mind and compassion, and maybe there's going to be some beautiful gems in there. And like I said, maybe breath work would have sounded voodoo years ago, but I'll say straight up, I don't give a shit. It makes people feel better. And I mean, this comes with age too, I must say. And I'm also, not to pump up tires or self promote, but I have a book coming out soon about like leadership and like some principles of leadership, because
Promote it. I love it.
no, it's just what was lacking, Mike. Like,
Yeah.
it really was lacking. Like, and I'm never was a guy that was seeking to be a leader or anything like that. I just wanted to, like, I've always just wanted things to turn out right. And you just saw throughout this pandemic, we lacked leadership, we lacked courage,
We definitely lacked courage.
we lacked values, and we shouldn't be kiboshing people's voices. We shouldn't be just like, we should be fostering courage. We should be fostering relationships. We should be fostering open-mindedness. And this is a path forward as far as I'm concerned. And so we had to put some thoughts together. Hopefully this bad boy comes out late spring, but like, we're at the tail end of this thing. But it really is, I feel like, something that people need to hear is how do we lead moving forward? And it's got to come from values. It can't come from fear.
Well, that's a beautiful way to end it. And I definitely want to have you back on as soon as that podcast, or sorry, as soon as that book gets released. I'd love to read it and to, chat about it more with you. So on that note, please tell everyone, where can they find you on Twitter? Where can they find you on Instagram? Where can they find your podcast, your book, all that jazz?
Oh, thank y'all. And this was a lot of fun, Mike. But the abbreviated version is, if you look up at Quadcast KW Arms, our biggest one is on TikTok. Our podcast is Solving Healthcare. You can go to quadcast.substack.com. That's where all our shit is. Everything that you'll need to know is on there. Our courses, our ebooks, our blogs, everything. Our podcast is on there. And we call it on the show, we say we're just trying to change the boogie. And that's what we're doing. That's what Mikey's doing right now. Changing the boogie, because the boogie's got to change.
Trying to do it, brother, trying to do it. And I'm certainly glad to do it with you. So everyone, thank you so much for listening. Go to Quadcast, check out everything that he's doing. And thank you so much for listening. And as always, I'll be back again next week.
Thanks so much.